tossers have thrown it out the door with their behaviour this week. They should be ashamed of themselves. They should absolutely look at themselves in the mirror and wonder what the have they been doing. They were hissing at us and calling us cheats in the Lord's long room, and they have the gall to talk to us about the spirit of cricket. Absolute bullshit.
There's a big appeal, it's hit him on the pad, he's out! Lions gone, New South Wales are 9 down! Onto Sydney Road, and it's hit a car! Oh, I think it's hit a car! What a way to bring up your 50!
All you want is to leave it all behind. Now there is a simple remedy to stay fit for all eternity.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Cricket Unfiltered podcast. We are live on YouTube, and we are just a week and a bit away from the Ashes kicking off. And I can't wait for today's show because we've got a lot to get through. Joining me, as ever, is broadcaster Damien Watson. Hello, Damien.
Hello, Manners. It's getting closer, isn't it? The weather's not getting warmer, though. That's annoying.
Well, it'll be hot in Perth, I imagine.
Yeah.
And joining us from the north of England is cricket writer Alex Bowden. Alex, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hey, guys. Yeah, not too bad. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, it might not be getting warmer there, but I think it's pretty warm compared to here. Certainly cricket weather. It's not cricket weather here.
Now, Alex is joining us because he's co-written a great book, The 50 Most Ridiculous Ashes Moments. He's co-written that with friend of the show, Dan Liebke, who's been on a few times. I think the last time Dan was on, he talked about Australia's 10 greatest World Cup wins. And Alex, that's not a book you could ever write from an English perspective, could you? Could you be struggling to find 10 great World Cup wins for England?
It'd be more of a pamphlet, wouldn't it?
Yeah, is that why you teamed up with Dan? Because England alone doesn't have enough material.
No, it's an efficiency because we can write 24 hours a day. We cover all the time zones, get a lot done that way.
Excellent. So for those watching on YouTube, I'm holding up the book, The 50 Most Ridiculous Ashes Moments. We'll be going through a few of them. But before we get into that, there's been a lot of Ashes news today. Actually, just before we started, Alex, I was saying to you off air that, last podcast or the podcast before, I was calling the English a bunch of fucking hypocrites. But then, I apologized on the last show because the English have rattled me, Alex. And, it's good to have you here because I can get the perspective from the other side. I get upset when the English start wagging their finger at us Aussies saying, oh, you can't be doing headlines like that about us, because I know the English are just as culpable as the Australians. They go just as hard. Now, what's your perspective from someone on the other side? What do you think?
Oh, in terms of headlines, yeah. Like the British tabloid press is not going to hold back on anybody. But to be honest, probably a bit more scattergun, and they'll take out the English as well. They're quite happy to send out some friendly fire, as it were. Yeah, I mean, when it's the other team doing it, it's always worse, isn't it? As you say, I think we're all hypocrites. But I've enjoyed it this week. That it's kind of pantomime, all of those sorts of headlines, and it's getting everyone going, isn't it? It's a bit of a wake up, ready. Like the Ashes is coming, it's on the way. The silliness begins.
Yeah. So what we had, the one about Ben Stokes, and then we had Joe Root. The headline was, average Joe. You gotta laugh at this stuff, and I don't think the English should be wagging their finger at us. I think we learnt this stuff from the English. I mean, we borrowed it from you lot. We're just generally nice people.
I'm hopeful. I mean, assuming there's lots of to and fro in airports, it seems like each time an England player lands, there's a new nickname. So we're up to, what was it, Captain Complainer? I can't remember.
Cocky Captain Complainer.
Cocky Captain Complainer. I knew it wasn't as simple as that. And then Average Joe. And I think they'll work their way through the batting order. Each time someone arrives in a new city, hopefully get a new nickname. And by the end of the series, we'll have a full 11 of new nicknames. I'm quite excited about that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's going to be nothing compared to what the Barmy Army throws at the Australians this summer. I'm trying to keep a lid on my frustrations because it's going to be tough because apparently the Barmy Army, they've been writing songs for 8 years. They haven't been here since Sandpaper Gate.
Yeah.
So they've been holding these bullets in the chamber since 2018.
Yeah, they're all backed up, and it's going to be a sight to see. I think. I imagine. I don't know what the sort of attendance is going to be like, but I think there's going to be a heavy England presence at most of the grounds, particularly over the festive period, particularly over Christmas.
Oh, yeah, they never shut up either, the Barmy Army. It's going to be relentless. And poor Alex Carey and Steve Smith, they're going to cop it. They're going to cop it. No one cares about their mental health.
Steve Smith's never going to notice. He's in his own world. He's not. He's impervious to anything like that.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, lots of news today on the Ashes front. So a bit of a scare for Josh Hazlewood. He left the Sheffield Shield match early for scans, but it's all cleared up and he'll be okay for the first test. That was very nerve-wracking because if Hazlewood was going to miss out as well as Cummins, that would have been disastrous. But Sean Abbott has been ruled out of the test match. There's no great loss there. He probably wasn't going to play, but it will mean Australia have to go further in their bowling depth. But the big news, Pat Cummins spoke today, and he's been bowling at 90%, and he's still aiming for the Gabba. So, Damien, I mean, that's good news. A couple of weeks ago, Cummins wasn't bowling at all. He's now up to 90%. That's quite hopeful.
Yeah, the rhetoric is certainly more positive as time goes on. You still have a few doubters out there. It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because the back can be unpredictable when it comes to that type of injury. And you look at some of the comments made by Rodney Hogg during the week, former Australian player, Betters. I think he's adamant still that Cummins is going to struggle to play at least in the front end of the Test series and would struggle to partake in any of the matches at all. But given the rhetoric is improving, that must mean something, doesn't it?
Absolutely. The only thing is, I guess, for Pat Cummins, it's a bit on a knife edge because if he pushes it too hard and it gets sore again, that could effectively mean he's out of the summer because then he'll have to rest for 6 weeks before bowling. So very, very tenuous at the moment. But good news. The other thing is Mitchell Starc bowled very well in the Shield game. He took 4 for 91 and declared he's found his rhythm. So good news. Nathan Lyon took 4 for 82 in the first innings of that game as well. So good to see two bowlers in the wickets. Probably the news most people have been waiting for with team selection. Cameron Green bowled 8 overs for WA in the first innings against Queensland over in the West. He took 1 for 13. Positive signs there, Damien. 8 overs from Green. If he can back it up in the second innings with 8 more, then he could be locked in for that first test.
Yeah, he's finding form at the right time. Obviously, the workload has to be managed as well. We know he's coming off a long-term injury himself, and you never know what form that can take if it accumulates, even though he's been well rested and obviously well managed coming in. But that is a good sign that he's making an impact with both the bat and the ball, Menners. And speaking of all-rounders, how about Bo Webster? He's been in fantastic form, mainly with the ball of all things. We know he's a competent all-rounder in himself, so he's certainly given his name a bit of credence. I think he took 8 wickets, career best figures. So Big Bo staking his claim as well. So it seems like the established guard, you look at Marnus Labuschagne as well, has been in reasonable form. The established guards seem to, for the most part, have established their claim ahead of the series.
Absolutely. Bo Webster will be disappointed. Hasn't managed to put a score on the board with the bat since returning from injury. So that's probably the only thing. Cameron Green hasn't either, but as we record this, he's not out, I think, for WA. So interesting how he goes. But you're right, Bo Webster 5 for 50 in the first innings. Bad news for Alex. Steve Smith is in sensational form. You can have nightmares for the next week, Alex, because he batted on an absolute dog shit pitch and he was the only one who could survive for New South Wales. Made 57 and 56 not out. A very poor wicket, ball keeping low. He looked 10 classes above every other player in that game. Alex, what sort of fear does Steve Smith instill in an Englishman?
Well, significant. He's had a couple of sort of not exactly fallow years, but he's not had his best run of form, has he? and then you're sort of starting to think. I don't think because he's hit such heights before. We never really had. I don't think everyone truly believed that he was sort of on the decline or anything. But you kind of hope that the poor form hangs on through an Ashes, ideally, and it's not looking like that's the case. Me and Dan are covering the 2019 Ashes at the minute, and that's a reminder of like just how sort of ever present he can be. And yeah, I mean, if there's one batter we don't really want to be in good form, I'd say it's Steve Smith.
Yeah, well,
Pretty
bad news.
decent,
He's
performance.
he's batting very well. Jake Weatherall, double failure in the Shield game. Disappointing he couldn't put some runs on the board ahead of that test. But Brendan Doggett took 5 for 66. And I guess if Hazelwood, this injury were to linger, they've said it's not going to, but it wouldn't be the first time that something flares up a few days later. So, Brendan Doggett, that's his second 5-wicket haul after returning from injury. So he's in fine form, and you would imagine ready as ever to make a test debut. So that is good news. And he's definitely the next in line now with Abbott's injury. There can be no doubt. So, Alex, what do you make of this Aussie side? I mean, Stuart Broad said this is the worst team since 2010-11. We know that's BS, but where do you sort of view this team?
It's a funny one, isn't it? Because it's such a familiar team. For like 9 or 10 of them have been around, sort of several tours ago. It was still basically the same team. And so you get to this point where they're sort of proven performers, but at some point things start to slide. And I think probably the signs of it's not going to be like underperformance. It's going to be what we're seeing, which is these little injuries and people missing out, and then going into the sort of bowling depth and seeing how these other guys perform who haven't really had like a huge amount of exposure of Test cricket, even if they've played one days and things like that. And yeah, the openers, that's quite interesting from an England perspective because Khawaja's, I've got a lot of time for him, but I think he's sort of a bit stagnant. He's not what he was a couple of years back. He's not putting on huge scores, and I know that pitches and conditions have been harder in Australia the last few years, haven't they? I think the ball's been a bit more responsive. Yeah. So, yeah, it's become a tougher gig. Whereas I think probably what England fans fear the most is the classic Australia Test series where you turn up, you maybe win the toss and choose to bowl on the first morning, and then it's 300 odd for one at the end of the day. That's the thing that, as an England fan, and you're just watching these sort of right arm fast medium bowlers trundling in and just getting spanked to all parts. That's the sort of the big fear. So the idea of like spicier pitches, top order batting, which is unproven a little bit because there's chopping and changing up there. They're trying to find at least 2 batters. Although if Labuschagne's in form again, that probably changes things a bit. We'll see how he goes. And then, sort of probably injuries in the fast bowls as much as anything. Not hoping for injuries, but kind of expecting them. I know they spread out the first few tests quite well, so I think they'll probably mostly get through that. I know Pat's missing the first one, but
well, interesting. Yeah. You brought up the pitches. Mitchell Starc made some comments after the first day of the Shield match that he hopes that Australia produces spicy pitches. I mean, the pitch at the SCG was slow and low, and he wouldn't have been happy with that, which probably would have prompted a bit of frustration from him. But it's interesting you put those comments against Todd Greenberg, the CEO of Cricket Australia, who said that if he could get on the roller and roll the pitches himself, he would, because he wants 4 or 5 days of revenue, whereas the fast bowlers want a bit of life. But I guess the real danger is for Cricket Australia, Damien, that if we get the green tops, the way England plays and the way Australia plays, it's going to be over very quickly one way or the other. So it's a bit of a lottery if you go too far with the pitches. I mean, we saw India get the best of conditions in Perth and win the first test last year.
It's that balance because you want to maintain a good competitive battle between bat and ball, but also you want to try and maximise, as you said, the amount of cricket you can play, and that can be a tough balance to try and master in a way, because you don't want a situation, man, as like the 2017 Boxing Day Test where it was a bit of a road at the MCG, and it was probably one of the more non-memorable Test matches of all time in the Ashes. So
Yeah.
I think they've probably learnt from that experience, some of the curators, and I think since then we've sort of moved away from that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. They just need to have a bit of life in them, because if England play on roads, then they'll just start stepping down the wicket and hitting through the line. And even with the extra bounce, you just never know if it comes off for them. So, Alex, a couple of questions. A lot of talk around here around England's preparation, and Stokes and Trescothick have both done press conferences in the last couple of days defending their preparation. They're not even playing a first-class game, playing a warm-up game in Lilac Hill. Do you think it's enough?
I think always ideally you'd want to play a bit more. They definitely sort of weigh how much they play against freshness, I suppose. So, I mean, the trend the last few years for most teams, but England is, in this instance, is to really go in pretty cool. Try and do all your practice in-house. I mean, they say that they plan a lot and they practice certain things throughout the year. I don't know, it's really hard to quantify these things. At the end of the day, it'll just be hindsight, won't it? It'll be if they come out firing and they warm into the series and they're strong by the end and everyone's still up for it, it'll, people forget about it. But if they get hammered 5-0, then everyone will say, well, they never warmed up. But I mean, previous tours they've come on, like it was only a couple of tours ago where they had about 4 warm-up matches and they got absolutely
spanked,
nailed.
yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I do think a bit more prep would be good, but they've got away with this. It's worked for them in other tours over in Pakistan and things, which are pretty alien conditions, and they've kind of adapted to them quite quickly. So I don't know. We'll find out when the first test, I guess, won't we? Or we'll draw our conclusions in the first test.
Damien, what were you going to say? Sorry.
I was just going to say, wouldn't you ideally, because it's against the English Lions, isn't it? Which is basically, effectively the reserve, or one of the reserve teams for England. Wouldn't you want greater intensity to match, or not necessarily to match what you get in the Ashes, but wouldn't you want a little bit of intensity from an opposition team where there is that little bit of unpredictability? Because I would imagine a lot of these players would know what the opposition is capable of. They know players within their own systems. Wouldn't you want that little bit of extra competitiveness and unpredictability coming into an Ashes series to try and match that intensity?
Yeah, I think
I
you
would
would.
think so.
Yeah,
they usually, tour matches are pretty feisty as well on Ashes tours, because they quite often pick Prime Minister's 11 type teams and things. It's often the people who've got a case to make, isn't it? So they're not always, but
no, you're right.
Certainly in years gone by, they've been pretty hard cricket, really. I don't know what was kind of offered to them and things, or I don't know how these.
I just think that they've just moved away. They've all moved away from tour matches now. Most nations have, and also, Australia might not serve up a decent team, so they feel they'll get better practice internally. Trescothick also said that Ollie Pope will probably stay at number 3. Do you like that, Alex?
Well, he said the same kind of number 3, which was a really weirdly roundabout way of not saying Ollie Pope. I want to know, is anyone else like a similar sort of player?
Because Bethel isn't. Bethel isn't like Pope.
Well, I presume not. In which case, just say, yeah, we're probably going to pick Ollie Pope. I can only assume he didn't know for definite, or he's just doing that roundabout thing of trying to avoid saying. I think it's probably the better way round, because Bethel's not made a huge case for himself of late. And if they did it the other way round, those are basically the two main choices for number 3. If they stuck Bethel in, they're basically dropping Pope and sort of denting his confidence. And then if at some point midway through the series you want to make a change, you've got to bring back the guy whose confidence you've just knocked. So I would say it's the better way round to stick with the guy you've got. He's not got a terrible record or anything. He's scored plenty of Test hundreds. He usually starts series well too. He tends to tail off.
So you're happy?
So I'd
with
say
it?
it's the right choice.
Good. Question for you, Damien. Stuart Broad was on your SEN today, SEN where you work with Jared Waitley, and he sort of suggested that Australia have maybe given up a slight advantage, not starting the Ashes at the Gabatoir, where it's gone so wrong for England so often. Do you think we're ceding a small advantage?
To a degree, yes, because I think that's just what we've become accustomed to. And that's not just against England, Minners. I think that's against most opposition teams that have toured here. We've become accustomed to starting things off at the Gabba. I know dollars come into it. We know the Perth. What's an interesting one with the Perth audience, we had the first test against India last year. And I remember the crowd, even though it was, better than previous summers where we've had test matches in Perth, it still wasn't that big. For a test match involving Australia and India. It was probably the worst out of all of the matches. Perth's a weird sort of city, just for context, Alex. They get massive crowds to the Perth Scorchers home games, Perth being the local Big Bash League team. They tend to get well over 40,000 on a regular basis. I reckon the biggest crowd, Menners, for Australia v India on any of the matches, any of the days of the first test match last summer, big build-up coming in, would have been about 35,000. So it's a strange old city, Perth. But anyway, I think there is a little bit, back to your question, a little bit of an advantage. I'd probably agree with Broady there because psychologically we're used to the conditions in Brisbane. Particularly, it gives the opportunity for the batsmen to get their eye in as well.
I mean, we'll get to Alex's book, but how many ridiculous moments have England had at the Gabba? I mean,
2002 is the classic. We saw Alex
Harmison's ball to first slip. I mean, it's all at the Gabba.
The thunderstorm where it looked like we were going to have Armageddon at 3:00 in the afternoon in 1998. Many interesting moments.
Rory Burns getting bowled around his legs by a straight one.
Peter Siddle's hat trick on his birthday.
We'll see how England goes. I mean, it's going to be tough at Perth anyway. It's going to be a lively wicket. So, if England go down at Perth, then head to the Gabba for a day-nighter. That could be difficult. All right, we're going to take our first break in a second on Cricket Unfiltered. Then we're going to talk about some of these ridiculous Ashes moments. I can tell Alex can't wait to talk about them. Just before we get into that, exciting news, we've got a Cricket Unfiltered giveaway. So earlier this week, I launched the new T-shirts and they've been flying off the shelves. So for those watching on YouTube, you'll see me put them up now. We've got the Unemployment Office Queue for the English cricket captain and English coach. We've also got the Johnny Bairstow Walk T-shirt, and then we've got the Moral Victory T-shirt, which has been flying off the shelves. Now, if you want to win one of these T-shirts, you have to leave a review for the podcast on Apple Podcasts or any other app where you can leave a review. If you do leave a review, you have to screenshot it and send it to me because I can only see reviews in Australia. So if you're doing it in another country, I can't see it. So leave a review, screenshot it and send it to me, or you can share the podcast on social media. Again, screenshot it, send me the post, and I'm going to put the people who do this in a drawer and pick out 2 winners, and you can pick which T-shirt you want, and I'll send them out to you because, very excited about the Ashes, very excited about this merchandise. I've been waiting 2 years to stick it to the Poms after what they did to us at Lords and poor Alex Carey. And it's time for revenge. So these T-shirts are the start. Emotionally, I'm going to hold it together. Damien, I sort of apologized on Monday for my outburst last week. The English cannot break me this time. They cannot break me. I literally had a concern. I had a concerned listener write in, Paul from Texas, who was very concerned that I was going to lose the plot again this Ashes. So
that's what we want. That's what get the ratings up, man.
Don't say that, Damien. Don't tempt me. Don't tempt me. All right. I'm going to take a quick break if you're listening on the podcast, and then we'll be back with these ridiculous moments. You were listening to the Cricket Unfiltered podcast. I am Menas. I'm with Damien Watson and Alex Bowden, or co-author of the 50 Most Ridiculous Ashes Moments. Congratulations, Alex, on the book. Congratulations to Dan as well, who unfortunately couldn't be with us tonight. So I don't, Alex, did you know what you were walking into tonight? Be fair.
Not massively. I mean, got general vibe.
Good. So I love this format of books that you and Dan have put out this time, and Dan's done them in the past. I love these countdown books because they are just great reading for cricket fans. They bring back all sorts of memories. They're low commitment. You can be sitting down in front of the cricket, flicking through it. You can be sitting down on the toilet, just flicking through it.
I was going to say,
You
that's
can
what
be,
it's for, isn't it?
it is. Well, it's perfect toilet books. I mean, I've got a stack of Dan's books in my shit. I'm just waiting for people to come over. But, so there's 50 most ridiculous Ashes moments.
We want that on the cover.
Yeah. I'd love to get a couple of you. I'd love to get a couple of your most ridiculous moments. I just love the one here, number 37. Great memories of when Mark Taylor and Jeff Marsh batted through the day at Trent Bridge in 1989 and finished none for 301. I mean, that was just a beautiful moment. And the fact Jeff Marsh did that to you, how badly does that look in history?
It's not a great look, is it? There's a few of those as well. Long days without wickets.
Yeah. So, what are some of your favorites from the book?
Yeah, not so much those ones. I'll be honest. Those are sort of like in me. Those are just part and parcel of any England fan of my age. I like sort of going back because you know all the big ones. Like when people start getting to the top 10, they're going to recognize things, and you kind of look out for those. I like just some of the smaller moments, and I quite often like when things are going wrong, because we term ridiculous to be ridiculously good, also ridiculously bad, or just like really ridiculously weird. And often, like with two teams playing each other, ridiculously good and ridiculously bad kind of go hand in hand. Like each team is playing a part in that, for those really, really extreme moments. So I've obviously got like favourite moments where England are doing well, sort of 8 for 15, things along those lines, or like the Edgbaston test in 2005. Tough one to say, but an easy one to remember. But the ones that really stood out for me, like writing the book, the sort of like terrible, just single moments of cricket. Like there's a Shane Watson dismissal, and it's not an LBW, but those do get mentioned, where he absolutely skied it and just gave up. He started sort of setting off for a run, but you know, sort of Watto's demeanour when things were not going his way. You could see how he was feeling very easily. He didn't sort of like have a poker face about these things, and he was shoulders slumped, head down, just walking down the wicket. And Ian Bell came in to take a very, very easy catch, and did not take that very, very easy catch, just grasped it. And he was in such disgust with himself that he turned away from the ball and walked away. But Shane Watson assumed that the catch was being taken, wasn't paying any attention, didn't realise this had happened. Tim Bresnan was the bowler who missed out on the wicket. He just walked up to the ball, just absolutely furious that this easy catch had been gone. It was one of those days. I think Watto had 100 at this point already, and things weren't going well. Tim Bresnan picked up the ball, just threw down the stumps, just in anger, really. He wasn't trying to run out Watson. That's just a thing that happened to happen because he was throwing the ball so angrily. And it was just this, there's just this sort of one particular view where you see Ian Bell walking away from the ball, not knowing a wicket's happened. Shane Watson sort of walking down the middle of the pitch slowly, not really realizing he's about to be run out. Tim Bresnan executing a run out and just not really caring about it. He's taken a wicket, but he's still furious about the wicket that he hasn't taken. That was one of my favourites, just as a moment. Just everything sort of chaos everywhere. Whenever it's chaos, I enjoy it a great deal.
So that would have been, what, 10, 11?
Yeah, I think it was it? Or was it the one after? It was Bresnan. I'm not sure which year it was. It was down under though, yeah.
Yeah.
It was can tell by the way it was going. And then another one, similar sort of era, but I think this was in the UK. Chris Chris Rogers being out to the worst delivery of all time. Do you remember that one? It was a Graham Swan delivery, and it was beyond a full toss. It must have just slipped out, absolute sort of looping full toss, and Chris Rogers just went to, basically like muller it for 4, missed completely. His helmet's flopping about on his head, and it hit him plumb. Well, I say it hit him plumb in front, but the sort of like cherry on the cake was that the umpire gave it out, but the review, it was missing. So everybody was getting everything wrong in that. It was just absolutely horrendous passage of cricket from all concerned, batter, bowler, umpire, in the middle of and I think just the profile of the Ashes when it happens on sort of like a grand stage. In club cricket, it's kind of just like wince-inducing, but on the higher the profile, the funnier it is to me. Those are the moments that sort of live in my memory that I enjoyed the most.
I love it. I remember that dolly from Swan to get Rogers. You're right. He just tried to bosh it across the line, completely missed it, and was plumb in front. Yeah, that's very good. I've got here, I'm looking through your great book. I've got here number 14, Fond Memories of when Ashton Agar peeled off that, what was it, 98? 98 on Test debut from number 11. I mean, that one was one of the most thrilling partnerships, one of the most thrilling couple of hours of Ashes cricket. This, young 19-year-old who peculiarly will probably, that'll be his, finest hour as a Test cricketer.
Yeah, on his debut, and then the sort of final moment as well. Getting out for 98, was it? He got out for.
Yeah.
And there just wasn't anyone in the ground who wasn't slightly heartbroken about it, including all the England fans. And I know Ian Botham on commentary was like, he really sort of felt for the lad. And Ashton Agar walking off just kind of gave a bit of a smile, like it was no big deal. Like, your debut, you're like batting number 11, making 98. How is this not crushing you? But I think he just saw the bright side. It was kind of a shrug smile. He was very phlegmatic about it. I mean, I guess it's easy to be phlegmatic when you just like flayed a load of runs and made a big name for yourself. But even so, I think it was that was almost the weirdest part of it all. But yeah, a very bizarre couple of hours of cricket to watch. England had a real track record of conceding runs to tail enders at that time as well. I think Tino Best had made 95 against them the year before. Tino Best!
I know.
Not alive.
I know. Well, Alex, congratulations on the book. Congratulations to you and Dan. It's a great Christmas present. I can't lie to you. These books, some are the great formula. So congratulations. I encourage the listeners to go and find it there. And I've been flicking through it. There is actually quite a bit there for the Poms. If it's not all Australia.
Yeah.
I actually think
there's two authors. We've tried to sort of split the workload and the perspectives. And it's interesting as well, like learning like the other perspective on things. There's things that are bigger moments in one country than another and are seen very differently. We tried to get that across. But you got to lean into it at times.
Like the run out stat. Where did Bairstow's run out end up?
Yeah, I can't remember what number it is. It's pretty high up. It is high up, but it's really big. It's bigger down under than it is in England. We're kind of like big at the time, but people don't really think about it that much anymore up here.
It's 8.
Dan will have pushed that up a few places. I think we know that that's big for a lot of our audience. But in the UK it's remembered, but mostly we're just like, oh, you still bothered about
that? Just on that, Alex. In regards to the build up to this Ashes series, because it's an away Ashes series for England, and we're in the middle of the football season over there, the English Premier League and things like that. Does it get a lot of attention in the UK? Because the perception is from here. I mean, since 05, which was massive, of course, in England, really captured the mainstream. But ever since cricket's gone off free to air, there's been a bit of a decline in interest in the game of cricket, with the odd exception. Is there much of a build-up towards this Ashes series in the UK?
Yeah, I mean, there's undeniably drop-off in interest. I mean, that would be peak interest anyway, 2005, but then it disappearing from free-to-air TV has been... It's a real uphill struggle because people just don't happen across the game in quite the same way. And like the upshot of that is that the coverage is generally lower, and it's also lower for away Ashes as well, because people, like you say, it's just a football season. People aren't thinking cricket so much. That's partly why a lot of the sort of pre-series brouhaha is almost welcome, because at least there are headlines and things. Like from my perspective, I'm looking at the cricket sites, I'm looking at the cricket pages, I'm seeing plenty of interest. It's mostly at this point the interest will be people who are already into the game and they've been looking forward to the Ashes for the last 2 years, and this one in particular, I think more so than the last couple of series. The two Joe Root tours, I don't think there was great. I mean, optimism is probably not the word. It's more like they feel this is a team that will throw some punches and do some interesting stuff.
You might win a test, Alex, for the first time.
Might win a test.
15
Stranger
years.
things have happened. Can you imagine?
I can't. It could make this book. England finally win a test down under again. Ridiculous moment. All right, Alex.
Like at this point, it would rank pretty high. It's been a long wait.
I know.
So,
I think the way it goes in England with the time difference and the tour is, if England start to do well, people will be more interested. But then if they go down, as always, like 2-0 after 2, then it's very easy to just sleep through the night and not worry about it.
The groundwork's laid. If it gets excited, things will build. And this is the great thing about a 5-test series, that it can build like that. And I'm really hopeful that at least, there's drama and intrigue and some sort of tension, that it will do well. We'll see. But like you say, it could fade from view a little bit. It's easy to ignore cricket that's happening at 4 a.m. When your team's not doing well, isn't it?
Yeah, Australians are the same. When the Australian test team goes overseas during the winter, if they're losing, it's very easy just not to pay any attention. But we're going to crack on, Alex. Congratulations on the book, 50 Most Ridiculous Ashes Moments. Thank you for coming on. This has been good for me.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on. It's been great to chat.
I needed to talk to a POM and get the other side. They're not all bad. I'm seeing that now. Thank you.
And there's an Aussie.
We're going to take
a
quick.
If you really do hate the POMs.
Yes, Dan, great friend of the show. But yeah, we'll take a quick break. Then we'll be back with some cricket news and can't let it go. Oh, Alex was great, wasn't he, Damien?
Yeah, certainly was. Seems like a very affable type of bloke.
All right, so welcome back to the Cricket Unfiltered podcast. I am Menners. I'm with Damien Watson, and we're cracking on with the cricket news. Thoroughly recommend Alex's book, but some news out of the ICC this week. Good news, Damien, very good news. And it would appear that there's been an ICC working group led by Roger Twose, and this was a report on Cricinfo, and they're reporting that a 2-tier system has been scrapped. The idea of having a 2-tier test cricket system has been scrapped, and they're going to actually include all 12 nations. So Afghanistan, Ireland, and there's one other nation, Zimbabwe, aren't part of the World Test Championship. Their plan is now to include all of them in a World Test Championship rather than having a 2-tier system. And it seems to be the sticking point was the thing of promotion and relegation. For a 2-tier system to work, it needed some promotion and relegation, but England, India, and Australia just weren't going to play ball with that because it just wouldn't have worked for them.
Well, it means that if the relegation system is over, say, a 2-year period, Menners, if for whatever reason you go for a lean patch, if you're in Australia, England or India, then for a couple of years, Menners, you're up against pretty pox opposition and you're not going to sell many tickets and get much interest if you're playing a test series against the likes of, those lower minnow nations, like, even Sri Lanka, for instance. Imagine if our build-up was to a summer where we're playing against Sri Lanka for 3 test matches and that's the highlight. You know what I mean? So I think, and that was the issue I had, along with the fact that I think it's still good to give, some of those minnow nations an opportunity to play some of the bigger nations, because that's the only way they can improve realistically.
And you know what I think about the World Test Championship now? I actually don't think of it as a championship. I think of it more as a cup, a test cup run, because there's no way you can argue South Africa are the best test nation in the world at the moment. They're just not. And the cycle before that, India were probably the best team, but Australia beat them at the final. That one's a bit different. They're a bit closer. But I think if you include all 12 teams, maybe there's a chance a team like Afghanistan, or even though I don't think they should be in the tournament, but Zimbabwe, one of these smaller nations, Ireland, goes on a bit of a run and finds themselves maybe in a final. I don't know if it will ever be a proper championship, but if you see it more like a cup where dreams are made, and you think about for South Africa that's struggling to fund test cricket, them winning the test championship is great for them. And it doesn't, so that's the way I see the World Test Championship, more as a cup. If you include everybody, then perhaps you can get these great stories.
Yeah, exactly right. I didn't agree with it from the start, so I'm glad it's being cast aside.
Now, another thing to come out of this working group is that they're possibly resurrecting the ODI Super League. Now, I don't know if you remember, but there was a very short-lived period where in 2020, before that 2023 World Cup, they were going to have basically qualifiers for the World Cup, the 50-over World Cup. But then COVID and everything kind of scuppered all that, and they've never gone back to it. And the idea of having a World Super League is that would actually give context to 50-over cricket. So recently, when India were here playing Australia in those 50-over games, they seemed a bit random because there's not a World Cup for 2 years. But if there was a Super League, then they would be towards qualification and there would be greater context. And, much like the World Test Championship does for tests. So they're thinking of going back to that. I just wonder, Damien, is it too late? Has the world moved on now? There's too many T20 franchises. The schedule is so busy. Can we ever go back and find room for a proper ODI Super League? I just don't know.
Well, I think in terms of it being a league, do you go into a situation, Menners, where with the existing one-day fixtures, does that go towards qualification, for instance? And does that rank, do you get, if you're on top of the rankings, do you get, I don't know, a bit of a bypass or some sort of life in the World Cup, something like that to give these one-dayers meaning? Because I think you've got to give some of these one-day internationals meaning, Menners. Otherwise, what are you playing for? I mean, it's not like the days where we had the triangular series and you were working towards a final amongst three teams. It just seems like half the time they're either washed out because they're placed either at the start of the summer or towards the end of the summer, and there's not a lot of meaning to them. So I don't mind them trying to add meaning. It's just the way they structure it that's got to be probably finalised.
Absolutely. I mean, I like the way they do it in other sports where all the games mean something, then the seedings mean something. So if you had a Super League and then you go in certain pots maybe for World Cup draws, I don't know. I'm just worried now that the way franchise cricket is growing, that it's too late to put the genie back in the bottle. And perhaps you have the top teams automatically qualifying for the World Cup, whatever those top teams are, and then maybe there's a Super League for the rest of the countries, a bit like the qualifiers now. But I find it hard to believe India and England and Australia will sign up for more cricket, but we'll see. At least they're trying, and but no two-tier test cricket. All right, now local news, Sheffield Shield. As we record this, there is still one game going, Queensland v WA. And as I record this, Cameron Green's not out. So when you're listening to this, you'll know how many runs he's made, but he's not out close to a half century. So really good ahead of the Ashes. He's bowling and scoring runs. But Sheffield Shield points table. Well, today Victoria defeated New South Wales by 300 runs at the SCG. Not a good wicket there. So big win for Victoria. Sam Elliott took 5 for 26 in the first innings and 8 for the match. Peter Handscomb made a century on the first day, dropped on 0 by Jack Edwards, made a century before the cracks opened up. He actually got far worse to bat on the second day. But that victory for Victoria puts them on top of the table with 4 wins from 4 games. So stunning start for the Vics. South Australia defeated Tasmania by 3 wickets. So that's the defending champions' first win of the season. So they're off and running. Ben Menenti with a dashing little 40 at the end to see the Sackers home in a nervous run chase. As I said, WAV Queensland is still going, but Matt Renshaw scored 100 in the first innings. And Damien, a couple of questions here. Firstly, it's a wonder if they'd named the test side after this round, would Renshaw have leapfrogged Weatherald? Because Renshaw has scored 2 centuries to start the season, plus some runs for Australia against India. Australia named the team last week, but I wonder, had they waited a week, whether they would have made a different decision.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Could you make the case that Weatherald, to a degree, because he knew, I'm not suggesting he lost focus overall, but because he knew his position in the squad was secure, I don't know, maybe did he drop his guard a little bit? Does that come into the equation? I'm not sure, but I don't know.
He can't help it. I can imagine Weatherald's mind wandering now to the first test, definitely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, potentially. I think you got to look at it holistically, though. Over the last 12 to 18 months, he's still been the most consistent. And whilst he hasn't had the same form as Renshaw in more recent times, aside from the latest match, he hasn't necessarily been disgraced either. There's no one really. It's probably Renshaw really of late that's starting to bang down the door. I know Bancroft is starting to make a few more runs as well. Menners, although maybe the opportunity has passed him by. We know he was in great form a couple of years ago. He was probably the best performing batsman in the Shield a couple of years ago and then dropped off last summer. But good to see him making runs again. But yeah, it's an interesting one. I wonder if they have him pegged, and I know you flagged this a few weeks back, they have him pegged more as a limited overs player because of his attacking style.
No, I think I've got him pegged as replacing Usman Khawaja. If Khawaja were to retire at the end of the summer, I think Renshaw, if he keeps going like this, he could be that player. But let's not forget, Renshaw's barely averaged over 30 in the Shield the last 2 years. So
correct.
He hasn't knocked the door down, but he's turned it around this summer with 200s. Very good performance. So WAV Queensland still going, but really the story is Victoria 4 from 4 out of the blocks very fast this Shield summer. I mean, when you look at Queensland, who are still playing, so they might get a result. They've only got 1 win. Yeah, no other team has got 2 wins, and Victoria already have 4. So great start for them. Now the WBBL has started. Good news for the Sixers. Elisa Healy will be back for their first home game. That's being played Thursday night at North Sydney Oval. I'm going to be there. Big news for the Sixers. Elise Perry has been replaced as skipper by Ash Gardner. So, Elise Perry was skipper for 6 years. A tough period for Perry. They only made the finals once under her tenure. So you would have to say a failed run as captain by Elise Perry, and just couldn't get them the results they wanted. They made the final once under Perry, but then lost to the Strikers. So big for Ash Gardner to get some leadership experience. Obviously, such a big part of that Australian side. But she is, and the Sixers got up to a great start over in the West. Couple of things have just jumped out at me this season already, Damien. Firstly, there was some odd scheduling this week with 2 games at 3:00 on Monday and Tuesday. And I thought we were over this shit. Like, I thought the WBBL had decided 3:00 on a Monday afternoon is not a good time to put a game. I don't know who wins there because no one is going to go to the game.
No.
And no one is going to watch it on TV. Who at 3:00 in the afternoon, unless you're old and retired, is going to turn it on? I just think it's ridiculous. I thought we'd gone past that. I don't know why these games, with the amount of channels now, weren't on at night and in prime time.
Yeah, I don't really understand either. Does it come down to availability of groundsmenders? Because they've gone away from that whole stadium series thing this year, I noticed, whereas the last couple of years they tried to build up some matches at the Adelaide Oval, the MCG, SCG. Maybe a couple of those didn't get the crowds that they were after, and they've gone away from it again. Maybe there's a limit now as a result. And look, in fairness, some of those grounds are probably not available. I know the MCG is hosting ACDC a little bit later on this week, but yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it?
They played at City Power in Victoria. Do they have lights?
They don't have lights at City Power Centre.
Right.
You can't play
so
it
that's. I understand there's fixturing issues. I understand it's not easy, and the World Cup finishing late has pushed the WBBL back, but you just can't play games at 3 o'clock on a Monday anymore.
I agree. And it's been like that for a while now, hasn't it? I mean, I remember when I used to commentate it, they'd have games. Remember, they used to have a double header on a Wednesday where at the same ground where you'd have one game at 10 a.m. on a Wednesday and then the next game was at 2 p.m. on the Wednesday. And both games were done and dusted while everyone was at work. So it's a little bit difficult, isn't it? If you could play that night, they would. I just wonder if the ground, I don't know, does the grounds situation have something to do with it? In Sydney, they seem to have a lot of venues where you can play at night.
No, you're right. I mean, clearly playing at City Power with no lights, they just went ahead with it. But yeah, very odd scheduling. The other thing is, and Rachel Haynes mentioned this on the season preview, that, neutral games have got to be ruled out. You just cannot have games being played at neutral venues. So there was one on the weekend. God, I can't remember who it was. I think it was Hobart Thunder being played on a neutral ground. It's just no good for the competition to have these games where they're on neutral grounds with no home supporters. They really need to start investing in a bit more of a regular schedule for the WBBL to engage the fans, because it works. North Sydney Oval is a draw card. They just need to do more of that. And you're right about the stadium series. They've been shelved this year. Alistair Dobson said it just didn't quite work with the schedule this summer to play the MCG, SCG, or Gabba.
Yeah, that's right. And you mentioned too the neutral games. So it was the Sydney Thunder v Hobart Hurricanes at Allan Waterfield on Sunday, Metters. And then a little bit later this week, the Perth Scorchers take on the Melbourne Stars at Karen Rolton Oval in Adelaide. I know that's a bit of a curtain raiser to the match that night where the Strikers are playing. But even you got Hobart Hurricanes v Brisbane Heat at Drummoyne Oval. There's a few neutral matches there where you're not going to get much of an atmosphere. Adelaide Strikers take on the Perth Scorchers later this week at the City Power Centre in Melbourne, Metters, at 10 a.m. in the morning. So I know that's on the weekend, but still. I suppose they've had that for a while, though, haven't they? We've seen a few games over the years where it's a neutral venue. I guess they're just trying to cram it all in, aren't they, within a short period of time?
Yeah, they are. But I just guess what frustrates me is it doesn't even seem like this is good for TV either. You've got,
Well, I thought that was the whole point of having the WBBL at this time, where you have a bit of a window, and they do rate pretty well when they're on at night time on Channel 7, aren't they? When you put it on a Friday, Saturday night, even on a Sunday night, even on a weekday night, you could probably get a bit of an audience, even if there's not much of a crowd there, rather than playing it during the day.
I love watching the WBBL at night during the week. Absolutely.
And a lot of people do. If you ask a lot of main people on the street, Metters, look, AFLW gets more crowds. There's no doubt about that. And people have their affinity. And it's the same with the NRLW as well, because they have more of an affinity with their team. But if you ask a lot of people out there do enjoy watching women's cricket, because the reality is you don't notice a difference as much, particularly when it's televised. And when it's on at night, it's amazing how many people flick around it, and if it's on, they'll watch it.
Yeah, no, you're spot on. All right, well, that is it. The WBBL has begun. A bit early to really look too much into the ladder or performances, but the games are going to come thick and fast, so I encourage you to watch them. I'll be getting to a few games over the weekend, so I'll have more to report next week. All right, let's wrap this episode up with Can't Let It Go. That little bit of cricket news you just can't let go through to the keeper, Alex Carey, who doesn't drop him. He doesn't drop him, England. You wait. We're going to get you. But Damien, what's your Can't Let It Go?
Can't let it go for me. Oh, look, I've enjoyed some of the matches they put up on YouTube. Like, they've been putting full days up. And this is the Cricket Australia site, by the way, but they have their own YouTube channel, and they've been putting full days up, and managed to come across the 98-99 summer where they posted a full day of, I think it was Alan Mullally, one of my favourite days, even though it was before my time, one of my favourite days of having a look in retrospect at cricket, when Alan Mullally got some crucial late runs for England. Australia had to chase down 175 in the 98 Boxing Day Test, and managed to get skiddled, didn't they, by Darren Gough and Dean Headley, who took a bag. So I just thought couldn't let that one go past, given we're building up to the Ashes.
You love that. I think friend of the show, Stuart McGill, was the last man out that game. All right, and that reminds me, I've been watching a lot of Cricket Gold, so it's on Channel 7's app. Scroll down to the live section. So last night I was watching 2007, 2008 one day try series in Australia, India, Sri Lanka, Australia. Gilly made 100 at the WACA. His last summer, I think he'd announced his retirement. It was magic. And, I couldn't remember if Gilly made his 100, so I was locked in. It was like I was watching it again for the first time. I'm obsessed with Cricket Gold. I'm obsessed with it. Like, I just, there's so many new TV shows. I subscribe to like 10 streaming services. There's all these great shows. And last night I find myself just glued to One Day Cricket from 20 years ago. It's a very, very, very good channel. But that's not my Can't Let It Go.
Before you get to yours, Menace,
yes.
Another thing I wanted to mention on that, Rise of the Renegades, a good documentary about the Melbourne Renegades WBBL title last year. I had a look at that on 7plus as well. We're not being paid by 7plus, by the way.
We can be. We will take money, though.
We will if you want, but we're not at the moment, just a disclaimer. But enjoyed that, The Rise of the Renegades, particularly highlighting the story of Josie Dooley and how that inspired them to win. Josie, of course, suffered a very, very terrible stroke while she was on holiday and still in the process of recovery as we speak, was their keeper up until that happened. Very, very interesting and very, very good documentary.
Okay, love that shout out. Rise of the Renegades. All right, my Can't Let It Go is I got some tough news this week. I was very sad to hear of the passing of former England cricketer Barry Knight. Barry Knight played 29 test matches for England. He played his first test in 1961 and his last test in 1969. But he had a profound influence on my love of cricket and my knowledge of cricket. He was my first coach, and then I ended up working for Barry for 10 years, coaching during the week in his summer camps. And Barry surrounded himself with cricket legends. So I was so fortunate to be able to be a sponge around players like Doug Walters and Gary Sobers and all these great players. Peter Philpott, Brian Tabor, Norm O'Neill. I mean, I could go on. There were so many, but, Barry gave me this opportunity. But Barry himself was just a true gentleman. He was a revolutionary. He revolutionized cricket coaching. He was one of the first cricket coaches to use video technology to analyze techniques. He had a huge hand in many test careers, the War brothers, Mark Taylor, Alan Border, the Lee brothers, just to name a few. And most recently, he's probably one of his last influences was he coached KL Rahul about 15 years ago before his test debut. So his influence, touches test cricket now. But, Barry was a gentleman. He was so lovely to the kids. The way he passed on the love of the game to children was just inspiring. And, on a personal level, he was so good to me. When my father passed away, Barry was very, very supportive. He was almost like a second father. And, I kept in touch with him, for a long time, right up until his death. And, he was born in 1938, died earlier this week. So he lived 87 years. So very, very good innings. But very sad. And, it's interesting since his death. And, I just outlined my experience of working for him and being with these greats and what he gave me. And this experience, I'm not unique, that there are so many cricketers who have similar experience. He's touched so many as a coach, but Mike Whitney on the show recently talked about how Barry Knight got him to coach with all the legends, and Mike felt the same as me. And I've spoken to other people in the cricket community who had similar experiences. So Barry had a profound influence on cricket in this country. He came here after playing for England and played for Mossman for 10 years, and just a wonderful man, and he'll be greatly missed.
Very well said, Menners. And to have that personal touch as well highlights his impact. There's no doubt about that. So very well said.
All right, well, it's time to end this Cricket Unveiled because I'm getting emotional talking about Barry. But thanks everybody for tuning in Damien. They can find you at Damo_Watts. I know it now, so you have to finally learnt it. But remember, got the cricket t-shirt giveaway. So review the show, share the show, send me a screenshot of that, and you'll go in the draw to win one of the great t-shirts. And if you can't wait, just go and buy one. The links are in the episode notes. The Moral Victory shirt, the Bairstow Walk, and the Unemployment Line t-shirt. Thank you to Alex Bowden for joining us. Congratulations on the book. Damien, thank you for joining me, and we'll be back soon.
No worries.